Do you ever have days where you just can't stop thinking about why? Like, why do I feel this way? Why can't I just get up and work? Why can't I just do the thing I know I need to do? And every time you ask one of these whys, another one will appear right after it. It's like you're stuck in this infinite loop. And that is what I like to call the recursive why, the endless loop of introspection that never leads anywhere because the very act of asking why becomes your brain's way of avoiding the thing you're supposed to be doing. When you ask why, your brain rewards you. You might feel smart, introspective, and in control. You feel like you're working on the problem, but you're not actually doing anything about it. I mean, let's say you're procrastinating. You ask yourself, why am I procrastinating? You come up with an answer because I'm scared of failure or something like that. Then you ask, why am I scared of failure? Because I tie my worth to outcomes, for example. Then comes, why do I tie my worth to outcomes, and on that it goes. Now, notice what's happening. Your brain keeps producing intellectual answers, but not behavioral change or anything. Now, I did a little research, and this is what neuroscientists like to call the metacognition loop. They're feedback cycles in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that, thinks about thinking. It's great for planning and analyzing, but when overused, it's sort of a trap. You start analyzing your way out of doing the actions. And that's why you can spend hours thinking about why you're unmotivated, but still never actually move or act on how to fix that. And this is where it gets even trickier. The more self-aware you become, the more potential there is for this sort of loop, this metacognition loop to form. See, awareness is powerful. It's what allows us as humans to improve, but it's also what allows us to self-sabotage ourselves consciously. You start using awareness as a sort of shield, right? You tell yourself, I know what's wrong with me, I know my patterns, but in reality, you're just comforting yourself with the illusion of understanding. The recursive why disguises itself as healing when in fact it is a paralysis, because every new why removes you one step further from the original problem. You think you're solving the issue, but you're literally moving step by step further away. You're just moving the finish line, the goalpost of self-acceptance further and further away. Let's talk biology for a second. When you feel uncertainty, like when you're unsure of your life's purpose or your next step, your brain activates its default mode network. I've talked about this before. It's the network that's responsible for daydreaming, self-referential thought. That's, thought in reference to yourself. All of this, it's where your internal sort of narrator, as many call it, lives. And when it's overactive, it leads to a lot of rumination, right? Constant overthinking, self-analysis, looping thoughts. Now, the catch is your default mode network gives you these micro dopamine hits for every new little quote-unquote insight that you come up with. You think you're figuring yourself out, but you're actually rewarding yourself for thinking about change instead of creating the change. So the recursive why is chemically reinforced. You feel like you're healing when really you're just getting high on introspection. Now, don't get me wrong, asking why isn't bad. It's what separates, conscious humans from animals. But there is a difference between reflection and this recursion. Reflection is intentional. You observe a behavior, you draw a conclusion, and then act on it. Okay, recursion is cyclical. It's a cycle. You observe, overanalyze, you doubt your own conclusions, and then you question your doubt endlessly. So reflection ends with a decision. If you don't end your introspection with an actionable step, you're just looping. All right, there's a philosophical idea to this. Humans are the only creatures capable of questioning their own consciousness. It's, both a gift and a curse, because when you start asking why about yourself, why you feel, why you exist, why you do what you do, you're diving into a bottomless pit. There is no real final answer. Every why will open up another why, because consciousness itself is recursive. And this is why even spiritual traditions warn against over-identification with the self. Buddhism calls it the illusion of the ego. Stoicism warns about the disease of endless reasoning, as it was called. And modern psychology, obviously, there's analysis paralysis. I love saying that. It's very fun. The truth is, you don't find freedom by answering every single why. You find it by realizing that not every why needs an answer. Sometimes it's not really that deep. Sometimes you just got to stand up, breathe, and take that first step without knowing exactly why. Now, connecting this to the modern environment, the reason this recursive thinking has exploded today isn't just psychology, it's overstimulation. Every piece of content you consume gives you micro insights: why you're lazy, why you can't focus, why your brain is broken, why your dopamine is fried. Each one feels profound and productive. Each one makes you think, oh, that's me. But now you're stuck in an endless cycle of self-diagnosis, not self-direction. You become addicted to understanding yourself, but not acting on it, because acting means risk, it means effort, friction, it's resistance, it means uncertainty, and uncertainty to the overthinking brain feels honestly like death. I mean, that's the whole point of the survival aspect of it. So instead of facing the unknown, you retreat back to the comfort of knowing yourself to death. Detachment is the key, not detachment from life or from meaning or from feeling, but from your mental noise. When you feel yourself spiraling into another why, don't just fight it, just watch it. That's what mindfulness really is, not clearing your own mind, but noticing its loops without joining them. You realize, oh, my brain's just doing the recursive why thing again. And that small moment of awareness will break that circuit. Neurologically, that is called meta-awareness, the ability to observe your own cognition from a higher level. And that shift from being a participant to becoming an observer will move activity away from, again, like I said, that default mode network and towards the task positive network, which is involved in focus, action, and presence. In simple terms, when you stop identifying with your thoughts, your brain literally just stops looping. So let's make this actionable. Here's how you can break out of the recursive why if I had to put it in my own words. First, label the loop. Label the loop that you keep falling into. The moment you notice yourself thinking, why am I like this? Say that's the loop, because naming it will create distance. Secondly, I think you should shift the why to a what, because why will keep you in the past, or it'll make it too abstract. But when you ask what, it brings you into the present. Not why am I unmotivated, but what's the next action I can do right now to help that lack of motivation. Of course, there's also shit like doing physical activity, because movement interrupts all this rumination, right? The PFC, the prefrontal cortex, will reset whenever the motor cortex activates. I know this for a fact, right? So go for a walk, do push-ups, clean your room or something. Just do anything that physically reorients yourself to the external world. And, back on the topic of the modern day, limit your introspective content consumption. That's huge because, ironically, self-improvement can become self-sabotage when you have too much theory with no application, which just really deepens the recursion. Most people do not really lack motivation. They just feel stuck in that recursive why. They think that if they can understand enough, they'll feel ready. But readiness doesn't really come from understanding, it comes from actually doing shit. The brain is not designed to think its way into joy. It's designed to act its way into success, into clarity, into understanding. Action precedes meaning in every aspect. So the next time that you do end up spiraling into another self-analysis session, just stop yourself, right? You don't need another why. You need a what. What's one thing I can do right now that moves me a little bit forward, one step forward? That one step, not the why, but the what that step is where the momentum actually begins, because you'll never think your way into a perfect life, right? I mean, life isn't meant to be understood in full. It's meant to be lived and experienced. And when you do let go of the obsession with why, you start to rediscover what it means to just actually exist and just be. I mean, that is the actual escape from the recursive why, not another answer, but the silence that comes with it once you stop asking this bullshit recursive why.